At the start of the season, there was a lot of drama surrounding the 76ers. This wasn't unwarranted though. A lot had happened in Philly last season, from the Ben Simmons debacle to the performance of James Harden in the playoffs, and then the debate on whether or not Embiid deserved the MVP. Philly had a lot going on during last season, and it didn't help that they had yet another premature playoff exit as they fell to the Miami Heat in 6 games in the semifinals. This came after they struggled with an inferior Toronto team in the first round. So in this past offseason, there was a lot of talk surrounding the Sixers. People were calling for the firing of Doc Rivers, who was seen as the main reason as to why they were underachieving. They had been calling for his head for 2 years in a row now, and after the Miami series, it seemed like he was done. As for the players, James Harden had a lot of pressure on him this offseason as well. He didn't look good in the playoffs once again, and many people were beginning to question whether or not Harden could still play at the same level we had seen him play at in the past. He had been struggling with a mean hamstring injury that limited his explosiveness, and this minimized his impact on the game. He couldn't slash to the basket like he wanted to, and neither could he playmake like how he used to. And this was very concerning for Sixers fans, considering they traded a lot to get him. These were the main critiques on the Sixers, and they had a lot of pressure on them coming to the season. But as of recently, the Sixers have been lightening up, and they began to silence many of their critics after a very underwhelming start to the season. And if they can continue this level of play, we're going to have to take them very serious as legit contenders in the NBA. Now, before their loss to the Magic Monday night, the Sixers were on a 7-game win streak, including wins over Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, as well as their Eastern Conference rival, the Brooklyn Nets. The Sixers have won 20 of their last 25 games and currently sit within the game in the loss column behind the first in the East, Boston Celtics. They've had some very impressive wins during this streak as well. The most notable one came last Saturday though, after the Sixers overcame a 15-point deficit to defeat Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets 126-119 on the Saturday afternoon. This extended their win streak to 7 straight games. Embiid had a bit of extra personal motivation going to this one after it was announced earlier in the week that he was not going to be their starter for the All-Star game. Add that on top of going up against Nikola Jokic, who beat Embiid out for leading MVP 2 years in a row, there was a perfect setup for this standout performance from the big man. And that's exactly what happened. Joel started out strong. By the end of the first half, he had 19 points and 11 rebound double-double. Defense, however, was certainly not the Sixers' strong point in that half. Denver shot 10 out of 17 from beyond the arc and collected 9 fast break points in the first half. They shot 65.9% from the floor with ease, and this led to the Nuggets leading by 15 points going into halftime. The Sixers were able to cut the deficit in the third to just 3 thanks to some hot hands as they shot 81% from the floor. The Nuggets also began to slow down a little bit as they began to shoot 39% from the floor as well. And the Sixers took their first lead of the game with about 5 minutes left to play. That's not to say the Nuggets were going to let them run away with the game though. They held it close up until the end, but ultimately a dagger and a mean 3-pointer from Joel Embiid with 30 seconds left to go practically sealed it for the Sixers. Embiid finished his game with a monstrous 47 points and 18 rebounds, and that game alone probably earned him some votes from the media. The Sixers have done a complete 180 since the start of the season. They started out the season 12-12 and they just couldn't string together any wins. But as of recent, they've been on fire. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how are they getting this done? How is a team that was 12-12 going into December now one of the best teams in the NBA who have won 20 of their last 25 games? And the answer is quite simple. Elite offense. It feels like everyone on this team has had some impact on winning. James Harden looked like a vintage version of himself and undoubtedly is elevating the rest of that group around him. He is top 5 in the NBA in total assists right now, and this is very, very impressive considering he's been limited due to his injury and has about 10 fewer games played than the others around him at the top. This season, Harden is averaging 21.3 points per game, 11 assists per game, and 6.3 rebounds per game on 61.4% true shooting. And their win against Brooklyn last week is the perfect example of the classic Harden stretch we've been seeing recently. He notched 23 points on 50% true shooting. He had 5 threes and 7 assists, and it seemed like he just knew where to help at the right time. Harden's main focus so far this season has been facilitating and getting everyone else going first, only having to use his scoring talent from time to time and late in the game because he knows two things. It's the best scenario for the team in the long run, and he can get going at any time. I mean, he's James Harden. Come playoff time, Harden and others will be ready for any opponent to come their way, especially if they continue to give themselves the most straightforward path possible when they get there. The next reason for this is, of course, their MVP candidate, Joel Embiid, who, crazy enough, was snubbed as an all-star starter this year. So far this season, Embiid is averaging 33.6 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 1.7 blocks per game on 64.1 true shooting percentage. He's going off this year and has once again positioned himself to be an MVP candidate. Embiid has taken complete control of this Sixers team. He ranks in the 99th percentile with a usage rate of 36.5%. That's the second highest of his career so far. But if you watch the Sixers, this makes perfect sense. Every night the offense is run through either Joel Embiid in the post or a Harden and Embiid pick and roll, and this has led to massive success for the Sixers this year. And as for Joel, there really isn't much to say. He's a force out there and is borderline unstoppable. It's a shame he was snubbed as a starter this year. This is expected though. The way he and Harden are playing this year isn't really a surprise to many. What is a surprise is how well their bench has played this season. The Sixers offense is clicking at an high and elite level. In their last 15 games, the Sixers have posted a staggering offensive rating of 121.8, which ties the second best in the league in that span. They've also scored above the league average of points per game 17 times in the last 25 games. Meaning, to beat the Sixers, you also have to outscore about half the NBA. Since getting healthy again, guys like Tyrese Maxey are excelling in their roles. Maxey is averaging 20.3 points per game since he's come back at the beginning of the new year. The performance of the team's second unit has been very key for Maxey and the Sixers' success, as he becomes extremely more efficient from the field when he comes off the bench versus when he's starting. He's not the only one though. The entire bench for the 76ers has been electric. In the past 15 games, they are also top 2 in the league in offensive rating. It's safe to say that energy for Maxey and the starting unit has spread all the way down to the guys on the bench. Clearly, the Sixers are going to cruise to the playoffs once again, and they might get home court advantage. The regular season wasn't necessarily a question about the Sixers coming to the season anyway. With guys like James Harden and Doc Rivers leading the team, the main question was obviously, how are they going to perform in the playoffs? One of the main things that worries me about the Sixers is their defense. That's why they lost to the Magic on Monday. Poor defense. The Sixers blew a 21 points first half lead against the 20-31 Magic and just sputtered down the stretch of a 119-109 defeat that snapped their 7-game win streak. As great as their offense has been, their defense seems to have been just as bad. In January alone, the Sixers have allowed 118 points per 100 possessions, which ranks 24th in the league during that span. Doc has tried to combat this by putting DeAnthony Melton into the starting lineup to give them some better presence in the backcourt on defense, as Harden and Tyrese Maxey are both below average on the defensive side of the court. But this hasn't helped them too much. This is a glaring weakness for the Sixers and a big concern for me going into the postseason. I mean, what's the point of scoring on offense if you're just going to give it right back up on the other end? Another huge weakness for them is rebounding. The Sixers rank 28th in rebounding this season. In order to beat the top teams in the East and in the entire NBA, you have to be able to create extra possessions on offense and limit the second chance points on defense. They've struggled with this countless times this season, and as soon as they face some sides in the postseason, it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond to it. Lastly, another huge concern of mine is the coaching of Doc Rivers and the star play on the Sixers. We all know how mediocre of a coach Doc can be, and it usually shows itself in the playoffs. This is well known, and this is why the fans have been calling for Doc's head these past few years. Doc has been a big part of their shortcomings these past few years, and it's likely that that will be the case once again this year. As for Harden, I'm a little hesitant on him. I haven't seen him perform to his potential in the playoffs yet, and for this reason, I'm putting a question mark next to him. He'll be the X factor for the Sixers this postseason, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he performs once the playoff arrive. Of course, last postseason he didn't play so well, but I'm not going to fault him for that. These past 2 years, he's been injury riddled with a mean and nasty hamstring injury. And so far this season, he looks very healthy. That's why he's been playing so well this season. But of course, the question is, can he continue it going into the postseason? As for Joel, the concern isn't as big for me. It's there though, simply because of how he's performed in the playoffs in the past. You see, you look at the numbers. Joel has big games on the stat sheet. He always starts off phenomenal in the playoffs, but as time goes on, once you hit the second half, once you hit the second round, he seems to wear down. In the past years, Joel has had phenomenal first half or first round performances, but he is just never able to sustain that level of play. I can't fault him for this too much though. That's why I'm not too concerned about it. Joel has never really had someone to take pressure off him come playoff time. Ben was never able to step in and do that due to his aggressiveness and play style. James wasn't able to do that last year because his injuries hindered him. If James can play like the James we know, I expect for this to dwindle, and Joel will continue and sustain his dominance throughout the entire Sixers playoff run this season. It will be very interesting to see how much these weaknesses affect the Sixers this season and in the postseason. I wonder if their elite offense and star play will be able to bail them out come playoff time. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think the Sixers can carry their strong play into the postseason and make a legit push to the NBA Finals? Or do their weaknesses scare you off the train of the Sixers being official NBA title contenders? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like what you heard and would like to hear more like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be making videos like this all season covering the entire NBA. But that's all for now. Until next time, peace.